Hello and welcome to Change Your Story, Change Your Life. I'm your host, Reverend Mitch Austin, and I'm so excited about today's show. This little show is about looking at people's lives and kind of unpacking the journey, making sense of what came before and why it had to happen and the defining moments and the lessons and blessings that we've picked up along the way. And before we drop into today's show, I do want to just do a quick shout out to the Joyful Gathering Spiritual Center, who is hosting my Metaphysical Parables Decoded class. We're going to do a workshop tomorrow at 4 p.m. It's going to go for an hour and a half, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard. Of course, 7 p.m. on the East Coast. And it's just $20. And look, if you don't have a relationship with the Bible, get in this class. There's a metaphysical way to look at it. The symbology actually reflects spiritual principle. In the Bible, when the Bible mentions a house, it's talking about consciousness. And when it talks about a door, how you're opening or closing your consciousness to outside influences. A lot of people don't know that there's this symbolism. So if you want to learn more, there's going to be a link here. We're going to drop that link. Go ahead and click on it. You can get registered. The class is an hour and a half. And if you like it, we're doing a full set of 4 of those classes in January. Just $20. Great deal. So I hope you can join us tomorrow night. All right, let's get into the show. I'm so excited to have my brother from another mother, Steve Andrews, here today. So Steve runs She Reigns Creative, which is a 7-figure marketing agency, which has doubled its revenue in the past 2 years. Despite the economy. Aside from that, he also runs a dance studio and production company. He's fresh off the Nutcracker, and still recovering, I think. Steve hails from Great Britain and has been in California since 2008. His agency is a digital marketer certified trainer. Oh, he is a digital marketer certified trainer, and has an SaaS product with over 300 subscribers. I think that's software as service. He's married to the beautiful Nicole and has 2 beautiful children who I adore, Addy, who is 16, and Charlotte, who is 8. And Charlotte at 7 took my Taming Your Inner Critic, and she found a typo in my test. She's phenomenal. Steve holds a bachelor's degree in French, German, and Spanish, as well as he has an MBA that's focused on marketing management from Cal State East Bay. Steve has taught marketing communication, leadership, business statistics for Cal State East Bay. And my favorite part is he's the president of the Amani Center Board, a metaphysical spiritual community. And I'm on the Ministerial Council. So we're BFFs here. Yeah, welcome to the show, Steve. So glad you could join us today.
Thanks for having me, Mitch. It's exciting. I've been glad to watch it and now glad to, maybe glad to come on here and be grilled by you.
Well, I know how busy you are, Steve, and I know that your company is worldwide and you have people in all kinds of time zones. So I just really appreciate, and I know the value of your time, and I'm so grateful you could make some time to be with us today.
You caught me at a weak moment. I was post Nutcracker. I was in a haze.
See, I strategically planned my ask, by the way. So Steve, you've been in Rise and Speak, which was fabulous, and I learned so much from you as well, having went through the Carnegie Institute and things that Carnegie teaches about speaking that I had no idea about. So it's been a great collegial partnership with you, and I know a lot about your life. So that $20 you paid me not to say certain things, we won't tell anyone about that. But Steve, if your life were a book, what would the title be and why?
I don't know. You kind of posed this question to me, and in advance, and I'm still, no further along with it. It's kind of just like bumbling along and having fun while doing it. Taking opportunities as you go through.
Mm.
I'm British and verbose and speak too long for most things. So it's hard to nail down, quite what that talk would be. But taking chances, I guess, something along the lines of that.
Mhm.
One of the things that I thought around when you mentioned this question as being a place where you like to start was, I've always said, even from my early 20s, if I die tomorrow, if I transition tomorrow, I don't want a sad funeral. I've lived my life, I've taken my opportunities, I've done some fun things, and you know, this is not sad. I've enjoyed my time. Don't get me wrong. It's not that I want to end my time and move and transition or anything like that.
Are
There's
you
a lot
Addy?
more fun to have. But I do, I've always taken advantage of opportunities in front of me, and I continue to do so.
Well, and I love that because there were, several opportunities I imagine, and we can unpack this, where you could have just played it safe, where you could have stayed small. For instance, like you grew up in Great Britain,
Mhm.
right? And how does it work in Great Britain? Like, I know you have to go through school and you have to take tests, and then do they see where you're best suited? Like, how does that unfold in Great Britain for people?
It's a similar track to the United States. I would say, when I was graduating high school, which would your equivalent of high school, which would have been around 2000, um, it was becoming more like the United States, that university was expected. But my parents definitely said to me, "Hey, you don't have to go to college. You can go and get a job. It's not unusual to go and get a job at this point." And
Right.
it was a little bit more different. Things have changed. It's funny. Nicole, my wife's always like, "Well, you're talking about the England that you were in 15 years ago. It's not the England you're in now.
Mm,
That you're in now." So
yeah.
you used to be able to leave school at 16 in England. You can't anymore, I don't believe. So people
Wow.
would go and take jobs at 16, if that's what
Right.
the best thing for them to do was. But, it is now more normal to go through to 18 and at that point to,
Mhm,
choose your path at that point. But,
mhm.
you are kind of put on that rail track to college. That is the normal thing over there. So,
And what did you choose? Did you get a job? Did you explore life? Or what was your path?
so, I've been blessed to be able to pick up most things quickly. So, we in England we do what are called GCSEs, which is a general certificate of secondary education at
Mm,
16. The equivalent of your sophomore year in high school over here. And so
mhm.
I got at that point you do a broad range of subjects. You do 10 subjects or so. You're typically doing English, science, math, a history or a geography, a language,
Right.
an art, etc. So you're doing a wide breadth of things. And honestly, I got 7 A's, an A star, a couple of B's, and that was kind of where I was. And it was like, well, what do I want to do next? I could have gone and done English, French, and German. I could have done math, business studies, computer science, etc. We drill down to 3 or 4 subjects in our junior and senior year of high school.
Yeah.
That's how it used to be. It's changed slightly, but even so, you specialize a lot more in England, whereas in the United States, it's a very general education,
That's what I thought. Yeah.
even through till sophomore year of college over here. You're still doing general education, whereas
Yeah.
I chose to do French, German, math, and business studies for my A levels, which are in those junior and senior years. So at that point already, I'm drilled down to just 4 subjects,
Wow.
spending 5 hours a week on each of them, and a little bit more than that. So,
Right.
so for me at that point, I was there, and then I didn't really know where I wanted to go. I kind of toyed with the idea of going to Cambridge or Oxford because I could have gone there if I'd have wanted to from a grade perspective. But I went to a presentation and saw this guy talk about math, because that was an option. I could have gone down the math route. I was always good at math. And he was okay. And then this woman came out, and she was vivacious and lively, and she spoke about languages, which was my other option. I love to travel. So French and German I was doing at that point. I made some good friends who were in England from Dominican Republic, Argentina, and Colombia. They were all Spanish speakers. So I was like, well, I should learn Spanish as well, right? I learn these languages. So I went for this fun, vivacious, and she happened to come from the college that I graduated from, which was University of Wales in Bangor in North Wales. And so it was set for me at that point that I was just going to follow my joy almost at that point. And I actually looked at a couple of different schools that had this triple major, they call it. It's not the equivalent of a US triple major, but there was no minor. Everything was to the same standard. So they just take a standard degree and split it into 3 sections. Whereas here, if you do a major and a minor, you end up with extra units. It's not like that in the UK. So I decided triple major. This college had 3 semesters abroad. So I was like, okay, 4-year degree, 3 semesters abroad. I can sign up for this.
So you're weaving in the travel into because that was one of your passions.
Right.
And where did you go? Where did you go abroad?
So, throughout high school, junior high, your equivalent, we'd done French exchanges. So I'd already been to France multiple times with the school. I actually went to Germany. We arranged something that they didn't have an official German exchange, but through a twin school or sister city of some sort, we arranged me to go to Germany. And I'd actually been to Finland as well during my high school years as well. So our town that I was from, and I think it probably isn't the case anymore, but when the UK was in the European Union, it was twinned with 14 other cities. Specifically, we had a really unique program. So because of that, they would get all the kids together and go to these various countries. So, I went for a stereotype conference in Finland at 16, and it was definitely a life-changing experience for me to do something like that.
So which was your favorite
of those places? I love Finland. There was something, we were in Finland for midsummer. So it was light all night, the temperature was, they had one of the signs that had the temperature on it, and it said 21 degrees centigrade, 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and midnight at the same time, and it was light in the background, so it never went dark. It stayed light all night because we were there in the middle of June. And then, Finnish, we had the experience of going to a Finnish sauna as well. So you'd go in the sauna and then you'd run down the pier and dive into the lake. Finland was incredible. And for me, it was great to meet all of these different people, like from different countries. I found the Danish really had a dark, sarcastic sense of humor. So we got on really well because that's the English sense of humor. So the Danish work was so good, such good fun, and then the Italians brought the party, and it was a great trip. But that's not even coming. That was my experience pre going to college. So when I went to college, we had to do 3 semesters abroad, and so I went to Toulouse, which is in the southwest of France, not too far from the area that your family was from as well. So it was wonderful. Southwest of France is just a beautiful time, a beautiful place to be. I was in Passau, which is in the southeast of Germany. It's right on the Austrian border. If you've ever seen a Viking River cruise commercial, you see that boat going. It always goes through Passau because the River Danube comes, and there's actually 3 rivers that come together there. It's a beautiful little city there. We used to walk into Austria at night for a Mexican restaurant. It was crazy. And then it was so cool. It was so cool. Passau was a really fun place to be as a 20-year-old.
Good times there, huh?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Absolutely. Good German beer. We had a great Irish bar that I used to go to as well, of course.
In Germany.
Of course. And it had an English owner and then a load of German staff. And I would end up, helping out behind the bar and things like that. I'd worked in a pub. So it It was perfect. And then in Spain, I was in Valencia, which is just south of Barcelona on the east coast. It's where paella's originally from. Paella.
Really?
Yeah.
I love paella.
Yeah, me too. One of my favorites. So, and I like the traditional Valencian paella, which is chicken and rabbit. So everyone associates paella with being seafood, but the traditional one is chicken and rabbit and the white beans and the green beans and then served with nice crunchy bottom. That's a big thing in a paella. That's the best part. Everyone wants that crispy stuff at the bottom, and then served with like they call it the French would call it an aioli. Garlic mayonnaise, something that's acidic to break the starch of a paella. So yeah, I traveled a lot, and even better about Germany is when we were in Passau, they used to have a great travel agency specifically for the university. So I went to Prague, I went to Vienna, I went to Budapest.
So you got to go even different places.
Right. And it was before they were part of the European Union as well. So they were kind of in a cloaked space, going to Prague, going to Budapest, you're going to Eastern Europe at those points. And, a beer was less than $1 in Prague in the year 2001.
And you're a college student. Oh, this is not a good recipe.
Right.
I can imagine.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Growing up, one figure you mentioned that stood out to me quite a bit was your grandmother. Were you close to her? Was she kind of like a shero to you, or what was she to you?
Kind of still is, she's 95 years old.
95.
She just left her home this year and has gone into kind of an assisted living kind of place. But we were very close. She lost her husband 3 weeks before I was born. And I'm the only grandson, so I became a big part of her life. She definitely imparted a lot of wisdom, spent a lot of time with us, like many people, parents were both working. So we would spend a lot of time with my nana, as we would call her. And so she definitely is someone who would have fun. Sometimes, crossing a line, and that's me too. Sometimes,
Yeah, I heard there's the whiskey. She's never found a whiskey she didn't like.
She has an alcoholic remedy for everything. So, upset stomach, have a brandy, and it imparted into the family. Like, I don't drink anymore. My sister barely drinks, but if ever she has an upset stomach, you'll see her whip back a brandy. It's always like it's either going to make you sick or it's going to make you feel better. And she's a character like that. And she's been on her own for 42 years nearly at this point. So never remarried, but she was always she was always involved in the community. She's not so much anymore, but I think even in the assisted living, she's the first one down for the sherry at 11 o'clock, and maybe has a bottle of sherry in her room as well.
A little sherry after party.
But yeah, she opened our eyes to a lot. She was involved heavily with the Church of England and in England, of course, but she sang with the Methodist choir. That's just happened. She would go for, I think it was Women's Institute or something to that effect, which I don't think really exists over here, but it's a huge body of women getting together in England. If you ever see the movie Calendar Girls, that's a Women's Institute thing.
I didn't know.
Yeah, she was involved with that, but then she would do the choir afterwards, and she would be she's the life and soul. They would be up there, and she would go up and sing. And I remember her doing, and she was probably in her 70s, and they were singing a song which I'm not quite sure what musical it was from, but it was like, if I were not upon the stage, someone else I'd like to be. And she was a sports person, and she's up there swinging a golf club. It's like a sportswoman would be, and she's like, golf for football, anyone for tennis, and she's swinging a tennis racket, kicking a soccer ball into the crowd. Pretending to swing a golf club, and everyone's like crying because of laughing. They're on the verge of tears from laughing, and that's Nana. That's Nana. And she's definitely inspirational in a lot of those things. And one of the other big things that she did, and it's kind of instilled in me, is feeding people. You know, again, she always, you know, would go around to the different, you know, spiritual places. You know, as I said, she'd go to the Baptist church, she'd be at the Methodist, she'd be at the Church of England, she'd be at the Salvation Army. She used to cook for the Salvation Army. So every Wednesday, and Salvation Army actually have big churches in England, or not big, but they have churches, you know, whereas over here, Salvation Army, to me, I'm sure they do have churches in places, but it's the metal pots outside at Christmas. That's what I think of when I think of Salvation Army. Whereas back in England, I think about, you know, the church, the service. I think about my nana feeding 150 people on a Wednesday lunchtime, and, you know, them coming to me and saying, "Oh, I love your nana's gravy," or "She makes the best custard." And, you know, she did, you know, her gravy would always be thick. You'd be able to stand your spoon up in it, but, you know, but brown gravy, you know, not biscuits and gravy, brown gravy. Yeah. And, you know, very traditional English, but she did, and she would always do that. And she would be, you know, even into her 80s, she would drive around the old ladies who were younger than her.
Old ladies who were younger than her. I love that.
And she just, you know, she had a great energy, and, you know, and for someone who, you know, she said it not too long ago, you know, I've been away from my husband longer than I was with him at this point. You know, they were married for maybe 20, 30 years. And of course, she's been on her own now for 40 years. And
what an inspiration, you know, to chart her own way from her own spirit and to let that shine. And I do know, Steve, that you are an amazing cook. I love it when you cook food. I'm like over there, like, yes, save me a plate. So we're going to go to commercial break here shortly, but don't go away. We're going to talk a little more to Steve, find out how he made his way over here to America. And I don't want to forget the game show that you were on. So don't go away. Come right back. Quick commercial. We'll see you in a second. Welcome back to Change Your Story, Change Your Life. Look, if you haven't looked into Affiliated New Thought Network, you need to. They provide so much stuff. I don't even know where to begin. If you have a spiritual community, they provide resources, technical support, like with the internet and, you know, live streaming shows. Individuals, they have workshops for. They just did one on pronouns and gender expression. They have an incredible retreat that they do the first week of October up at Unity Village, life-changing. And they bring speakers from all over the world. We had Nemo Patel and Daniel Namod last time. Just mind-blowing. First week of October. So check them out, antn.org. So we're back here with Steve Andrews, who hails from England, now in America and California, El Dorado Hills specifically. So, Steve, what journey sent you over the pond to us? How did that unfold?
You know, I always tell people I never actually wanted to live in the States.
See, Spirit doesn't hear no.
I actually have powers of negative manifestation, because everything I say I don't want usually comes to me one way. It's like, I hear you and you need to do that.
You know, I just said I'd never buy a black car, and I just bought a black car. So
right, this is definitely have those stories too. You know, I always like the idea of going to Australia. Still haven't been there yet. You know, definitely somewhere that I wanted to go. And, the States never, we obviously growing up in England, lots of people come over to Florida. They come to Disney, that was the
Oh
big
yeah.
thing to come over for. And so everyone's like, oh yeah, I went for 2 weeks in Florida. And it's like, yeah, okay, that kind of sounds somewhat interesting, somewhat intriguing. But it was one of those places that I'd be like, oh yeah, it'd be cool to go to at some point. And so, I used to work for a motorcycle clothing company. I'm from Northamptonshire, which is really
Oh,
famous for leather,
really?
not just shoes, but Doc Martens, which were big in
Oh,
the
yeah.
80s, 90s,
Yeah.
they're
Oh, I
still
used to have
around there. The big black boot with the big sole and the
yeah.
yellow stitching around it. They were from Northamptonshire, and my family were in the shoe business. My Vibram soles, which have the yellow block on the bottom, they're used a lot in hiking. My granddad imported them into the UK, and they were being used. He would do some of the best shoe brands for men. Not fashion brands, but well known that someone might have a pair of their shoes, and they're probably a $500 pair of shoes that you have to have on something that keeps them stretched appropriately.
Oh yeah, one of the shoe inserts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're the sorts of things. So Church's shoes and Chini's shoes are both very well known men's shoe brands, and like the England football team, the England soccer team would wear them, and so things like that, they would be famous for those. And great movie if you've not seen it. Have you ever seen Kinky Boots? Fantastic.
No.
You've not watched Kinky Boots, Mitch? You have
No.
Kinky Boots. So that's in Northampton. It's actually based on it. So the whole story is there was a boot company that was going bankrupt. We got affected. Northampton got affected a lot. Even Doc Martens took their manufacturing overseas.
Right.
But this factory was struggling,
Mm-hmm.
and they ended up making boots for drag people who wore drag.
Drag
So
performers?
drag
Wow.
performers. So because obviously, often ladies' boots they would fail, and so the whole story is around that. There's a musical around it now as well.
Really?
Like the heels
Wow.
break. And so they made nice boots for drag performers, which had the steel shank, so they could support a heavier weight and things like that.
Wow.
It's such a good movie as well. It is.
Oh,
It's got the
wow.
guy. If you've ever seen Rocket Man, he's in it, and
Wow.
I can't remember who the main character is. It's a fantastic movie, and it's set in Northamptonshire. So that's where I'm from, the place of these sorts of things. So I worked for a motorcycle clothing company. I was working in the export department after I finished my degree, French, German, Spanish. So I was working with the French market, and the business asked me to learn Italian. So I have motorcycle Italian, so I can order in a restaurant and then una giacca, un pantalone, and then the colors and the sizes and refunds and what's the problem with the zip, etc. I know all of those sorts of things in Italian. But so I happened to be out. We were doing the Milan show. We used to do a show in Milan every 2 years. Terrible. 10 days in Milan every 2 years. The Italian food, it was the worst. Imagine. But I was flying back with my boss, who I had a really good relationship with, and he was like, I need you to go out and do an analysis. No, I'd been out and done an analysis project for our big US partner. And he's like, I need you to go out there a bit more permanently. We're having trouble getting a visa for Ben, who was out here before me. He didn't have a degree, things like that. And so they were struggling to get him out here. And so I came out and initially was going through doing the work for them. So I was visiting stores. So I've been to a lot of random places in the United States. I think I'm probably about halfway through the states at this point in terms of how many I've been to. But I've been to the Oklahomas and the Texas and North and South Carolina and Georgia and Tennessee, and I saw the whole of Florida in a week, apart from the Panhandle, essentially going from Miami across to Tampa, back up to Jacksonville, all in a week. And yeah, the schedules were kind of crazy, but that brought me over here initially. And then I was actually in a relationship before I met my wife, and we wanted to kind of figure things out in a sensible way instead of rushing into marriage. So we decided, why don't I come over here and be a student? And so, that kind of opened up the door for me to do an MBA over here. And I think I came over to do my MBA, and within a week of being here, essentially, me and that ex were broken up. At that point, it was like, okay, it was a good job that we didn't actually go and get married or anything, because this wouldn't have been a good fit.
Wow.
But so I ended up doing, finishing my MBA out here. That business went bankrupt. 6 months. This was 2010, so it was on the edge of the housing stuff that had just gone on. There was an impact through things, and so I ended up. So 2011, it was January 2011. I was made redundant. I had 6 months left in my MBA program. The business had been paying for part of my MBA, and so I finished up my MBA and then ended up working for a mobile app company very shortly after. The iPhone had just been launched.
Oh yeah.
And then, the iPhone maybe was a couple of years old at that point. I think they just launched the iPad. I remember in my MBA, I had one of my friends. I'm like, hold the iPad up to your head like it's a big iPhone. This would be funny. So I have a picture of him holding an iPad up to his head.
Nice.
But so then from that, the mobile app company was an interesting experience into marketing. But I came back to the college because they had a great opportunity for me, and so I started with them on Halloween of 2011. Scary day to start. From that point onwards, I worked for the university for 2011 to 2017. So nearly 6 years I worked for the university, or Cal State East Bay as it is, and I think it used to be called Cal State Hayward back in the day.
It was, and then they changed it. And is that where you met your wife?
So I was, I was working there. So I met Nicole the same year that I started working for the university. So I met Nicole December 23rd, 2011. So we're coming up on 12
I'm impressed. You know the exact day.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I know the day. I know what she was wearing.
How'd you meet her? Tell me.
We met online. We met on Craigslist.
What? No,
when Craigslist used to have a personal section, we met on Craigslist.
Wow.
So yeah, I'd been dating. I met some really crazy people off some sites, and I feel like Craigslist people were actually the sane ones. So, the dating world's an interesting place to be.
Tell me about it. I'm glad I'm no longer there. Right. So glad.
And so we met, and I think even before we actually met in person, just from chatting, I knew she was incredible. She's absolutely incredible. And, we met, and I think I went to my sister's wedding in Barbados in April, and she's like, I found us a place to live. And I'm like, awesome, let's do it. So we were living together by June,
wow.
June,
so you just kind of knew. You just kind of knew.
Yeah. Not that we don't drive each other crazy at times, but I think we're both where we are because of each other. We kind of pull each other, push each other, and because
there you are with this very stable job, right? Benefits. Cal State East Bay isn't going out of business anytime soon. Probably doing things that are in your lane, because weren't you like teaching and?
So I was the marketing manager for the college. As at that point, I went through a couple of jobs that I was also, doing admissions for the program, and then I started to teach. Once you have a master's, you can teach undergraduate level. So I was teaching. You can only teach one class. There's some weird rules in the state space that you can only do that. So I was teaching a little bit though, which was great for me too. It was pretty stable. But
then you leap into something different.
Well, I was having a conversation with a client the other day. They actually do end of life planning. And So they do things like departure directions. They do things, really legacy love letters to people. And, you know, they're, as much as though it's for people who are potentially at the end of life, they want people to take action during their life.
Right.
And, you know, the conversation was, well, we want this. And I'm like, well, you can't approach it from that end, because if you do, you're just going to be a life coach like everybody else, and
Right.
your what you actually have is inspired by death. With, you know, you know, we'll say, if we knew that if we smoked a cigarette we'd die tomorrow, you wouldn't smoke the cigarette, right? If you
No,
knew that
right,
what you put in your body today was going to kill
right,
you tomorrow, you
right.
wouldn't put that in your
A Big
body.
Mac. Yeah, you wouldn't. Yeah, McDonald's, fast food, all of them.
Right, exactly. You know, these are things you can speak to. And so sometimes you need something to incentivize that move. And
Mm,
so for us, we after we got married in 2014, we got pregnant quite quickly afterwards, and that was our intention. It wasn't an accident. You know, we were looking to have another child. You know, Nicole had Adelina, our eldest, from a previous relationship, but we were pregnant with Charlotte 8 months later.
mhm.
And this was a case of, okay, well, Charlotte was born in November 2015, and it was, well, we can't really have two kids in daycare. The
Mm.
cost of having a baby in daycare plus Adelina in after school care in
Yeah.
the Bay Area,
Oh
you know,
God. Yeah. No.
what you even working for at that point, because the take home isn't going to be much different to what you're paying out, and you're losing all that time with your kids and things like that.
Truth.
So
Truth.
we decided, you know, okay, well, we're going to try and figure out Nicole not working. So, you know, part of, while you have the stability in the university system, you also have bureaucracy which keeps salaries at certain levels.
Yes.
So I was capping out in my class, and
Yeah.
then the next, to go from that class, which was union represented, into a management professional program. Well, they were trying to not have these sorts of things. You know, unfortunately, the state
Right.
sometimes gets into the, oh, we'll pay someone $250,000 to be an outside contract consultant, but we can't have someone hired who we're going
Yeah.
to pay good money to, because it doesn't look good that we've got managers on here. The union
Right.
side of stuff looks good because their salaries are controlled and things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. 'Cause there's a domino effect, right? Once you shift one pay, yeah, it affects
Yeah.
it.
So we kind of got to the stage that, you know, we were taking on freelance marketing work, and to make sure that we could get by.
Right.
And it got to the stage where, you know, I think we weren't in a rush for me to get my green card. You know, I was on a work-based visa, so
Mm.
the university actually sponsored me. I think I was the first ever staff member that they sponsored for a position. You know, faculty, they would do it all the time for, but never for a staff member. But the dean of the college and the head of the graduate programs were both big fans of mine. So because of that, I was lucky to get sponsored. And so there was no rush for Nicole and I to get married, and then there was no rush to get a green card on the other side. But the second I got my green card, it was like, okay, I got my green card. Here's my 2 weeks notice, because I
Right.
can now go out and do this. And Nicole, you know, Nicole's a big part of that. I feel like we've always pushed each other. You know, when we first met, she was a fitness instructor, and I'd said
Yeah.
to her, you know, you should start a business on this. So I'd helped her build a business card and
Oh,
got her a website and all of these sorts of things, because I knew how to do that. And, you know,
yeah.
she said to me, they don't value you, Steve. You should just leave. And so I think, you know, I pushed her, she pushed me, and we
Nice.
both ended up, you know, out of that situation. And, you know, we were lucky enough that we built some stuff. So we knew we were going out to make at least as much money, with the potential of making more.
Right.
And so when you have that kind of off ramp, it does make things a little easier,
Right.
to make the transition.
But still harrowing.
Oh yeah, you know, and I think one of the toughest things for a business owner is to actually build a business and not just build a job that you can never take a day off from.
Ooh, tell me more.
So, you know, one of the things that I knew from the get-go is that, although everyone would say, hey, you need to speak to my marketing guy, Steve,
Hmm.
I didn't want it to be, you know, Steve Andrews marketing, because that's a business you can never get away from at that point, because everyone always wants to speak to Steve.
True.
And so when we got started, I knew I needed to hire people to do things for us. So, you know, even though the business was okay, I knew if I needed to hire someone, I had to pay them the right money. So I would DoorDash to make money, to make sure that I could afford to pay people. So I would get up, I would do marketing stuff at lunchtime, I would go and DoorDash, I'd do marketing stuff, I'd go, and then at night I'd go and DoorDash. So if I could make an extra couple of $1,000s a month doing that sort of thing, it enabled me to hire people to not have to be that person in the business, and the pressure just to be on me.
Right. Well, and door dashing doesn't take your mental real estate either, right? You still have your brain focus and everything you can put. That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
And I love that you share some of the sausage making, because I think sometimes people see success, like now you have a lot of success, but they don't always understand the sausage making behind the scenes that gets you to those next levels. And I think,
well, and it's hard as well. You know, being an entrepreneur is the greatest thing you can do, and the United States is the best place to do it. 100%. If you're thinking about doing it, do it. You will never regret it, he says. I'm sure some people regret it, but you know, just from a like, I feel like it's something that's become even more apparent for me is just the tax benefit, like making 200,000 or even 100,000 in a job versus in your own business. Even if you're the only person in your own business at $100,000, you're probably going to pay less tax as an individual. You're going to write things off that you are thinking about. You're going to do so many things here that's going to reduce what you pay overall. And you know what? If your kid has a recital and you need to be somewhere at 2:00, you don't need to ask anyone for the time off. So
isn't that great? That kind of, I think that kind of time freedom, that kind of life that you can craft based on your values versus having to fit yourself into a box.
Right. And the systems are just rigged for entrepreneurs. They really are. You know, as long as you've got something that is an exchange of value that can get you, you know, you really need to get to $100,000 a year to make it make sense from a business perspective. But once you get through that, you know, everything becomes easy. I think it becomes really apparent when you look at people making 150, 200,000, which isn't uncommon in California. You know, I'm sure it seems foreign to some people, but that's normal in California and right now. And when you're in that kind of space, the opportunities for entrepreneurs are huge, but it can be hard to start with. You know, healthcare to start with, you know, obviously is a big thing. And I remember we used to pay, I think it was $2,000 a month for our family to have. No, we did $1,000 a month with our first plan. And that was the basic one with Kaiser for the family. And I remember I had a kidney infection. I absolutely guaranteed had a kidney infection. My kidneys were hurting. And I read something about fish antibiotics somewhere. So not advocating this, but amoxicillin is often sold for fish in 500 milligram pills.
I know. Oh my God.
And
fish antibiotic.
You know, I don't have that kidney infection anymore.
That's good news. Well, we have,
you know, it was $75 to go and visit the doctor in the first place, and then a prescription fee on the top of that. You know, I think our health insurance costs us $2,000 now. We're just lucky that the business is in a state that it's just absorbed as a business expense for hiring me. So
well, and you know, I know, and we're going to get to this in a second. I know a lot of your clients are in the healing arts, the helping arts, and I think there's a lot of people in our audience watching today who are practitioners or coaches, or they do something. And I think the big challenge has been, how do you, from a heart-centered business place, also step into the business acumen that's needed to be successful? And I'm hoping when we come back from the commercial break, maybe you can share some of the insights that you see with your successful clients that people might want to consider if they want to become their own, you know, entrepreneur and expand their influence for the work they do in the world. So don't go away, people. We got Steve Andrews right after this.
New Thought Radio, music from all your favorite New Thought artists. From Jamie Lula, Karen Drucker, Gary Lynn Floyd, Ricky Byers, Daniel Nahmod, Eddie Watkins Jr., and many, many more. 24/7 New Thought Radio. Positively inspiring.
Welcome back to Change Your Story, Change Your Life. I'm here with Steve Andrews, who runs a very successful marketing company, and many of his clients are people who are helping people with their health, with their life, with their goals, up-leveling. And we were just talking about heart-centered practitioners and what they need to be able to transition into a successful business doing what they love. What are some of the things you see?
So, well, one thing we see is people afraid to charge for their time. I completely understand that. We absolutely do too much pro bono work. It's just the nature of what you do. If you care about people, you help people. But at the same point, for you to perform your best, you need to make sure that you're taking care of yourself as well. So, one of our clients is an incredible medium, actually.
Wow.
Fantastic medium. And her story is incredible. How she got into to becoming a medium. It was a path that was pre-designed for her.
Right.
To the extent that she actually had a miscarriage, and the soul of that baby came back and said, I was never meant to live on this earth. I was here to tell you that you can speak, you have this gift, and you need to use this gift. Wow. Incredible story.
Wow.
And she helps people with going through grief, particularly in that sort of space as well, medium services. And, we run ads for her because that's the way that people find out about her. And you go and read the comments on the ads, and people are like, she's the real deal. Jessica is the real deal. And you need to, go and spend some time with her and see what messages are out there for you.
Wow.
But ultimately, in many cases, people are uncomfortable asking for money. And it's not just people in New Thought. It's not just spiritual entrepreneurs. People in general are afraid to ask for their value.
Yeah.
And, honestly, when you're getting started, you don't need to ask a lot. You just need to ask something.
Right.
And then you need to ask a little bit more. And as you're, just as supply and demand, as there's more demand on your time, you can start charging more.
Right.
That's the essence of what goes on here. But it's an exchange of value, right? If you're giving someone value, they need to put the currency into you. You need to put the currency out into other people. It's that flow of energy.
Right. And I've noticed that when people pay, they pay attention. When I first started doing my spiritual counseling, it was on a donation basis. And I would have people, skip them, reschedule them, kind of show up, but not really implement things. And then when I got to a more structured, higher priced type of system, people always made their appointments. They were very engaged. The impact was much greater because people took it more seriously. And I actually got clients who were better aligned with what I was doing. It was amazing, the shift that happened.
Right.
And it was a win-win for everybody. Really.
Right. Yeah. Well, you guys know it, right? I'm sure everyone's had an experience that there's a free workshop at their New Thought Center or something like, oh, it's a free workshop, I'll sign up for it. And then you don't show up a lot of the time because something else comes up and it has more impact. That other thing becomes more important than that workshop that you signed up for. But if you've paid $100 for that workshop, or $200 or $250, you're going to show up, and you're going to show up with energy. And the energy you put into things is what you get out of it as well.
Yeah.
and don't get me wrong, you know, a commitment of time is a commitment still,
Right.
but you have to charge, and that's something you don't see enough. And
Yeah.
I think that people are often closetly spiritual as well. They don't you know they're not necessarily, they don't wear it on their sleeves.
Yeah.
And so, you know, because of that, they're afraid to be who they should be or who they're meant to be.
Mm,
um and I get it, you know, we're all kind of peeling back our layers here as we go through life.
yeah.
But this is, you know, people want to see you for who you are. They
Right.
want, you know, want to, you know, speaking of the social media, you know, we could spend hours talking. Mitch and I are both big talkers, so we could honestly make this a 3 hour show, and I'm
Easily.
out of this. But, you know, social media is a great place to find people. When you put some paid money behind, which doesn't need to be a lot. It can be $1 a day. It can be $10 a day. If you can afford that. When
Right.
you start to put some ad money behind that, you can influence, you can increase your impact and increase your influence to the people you speak
Right.
to. But people want to see you and resonate with you. So that's why the people who've lost lots of weight are great inspiration as health coaches. But, oh, look,
Yeah.
that person lost 100 pounds. I need to lose 100 pounds. He's
Yeah.
going to me, instead of the person who's been in shape their
Right.
whole life, right?
Right.
The impact
Right.
comes from that side of things. If you've walked a spiritual path, you can
Yeah.
help me walk a spiritual path. I know our client, who's the medium, is going to be doing. We're going to be working together on something called your spiritual side hustle. So this is going to be a workshop where it's, you know, take those spiritual gifts and actually create a side hustle, because
Right.
right now the economy is kind of a little bit. And
Yeah.
so if you can make an extra $500 a month, an extra $1,000 a month
Yeah.
doing something like
Yeah.
this, it makes a lot of sense.
Right.
And so, where was I going with that?
Well,
Brain.
well, well, the other thing I want to say, because this is what came up for me when you said about, you know, people basically showing themselves. And that's the other thing that I see with a lot of practitioners, coaches, people who want to do things. They want to teach metaphysics, or they want to do more with the coaching that they do or the counseling that they do, but it requires that you be seen. And nobody wants to get up on video. Nobody. It's really fascinating that there's this resistance to being seen. And I know, even doing the show, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to do the show. And, you know, what are people going to think? And, you know, because we all have like this internal dialogue going on about each other. And I think that's another thing that holds back a lot of heart-centered practitioners, is the kind of exposure you've got to give from yourself to people, whether it's a blog or a video, and video is most common now, and all of that. But and Steve, and in knowing that you help people, I think we have a link down below to your website, so that if people do want to get on board with you, they could reach out and learn a little bit more about what it takes, because if
Yeah,
you
and
don't know, you don't know.
yeah, you guys have got my email address as well. We can drop that below as well. And if you
Yeah.
send me an email, we'll do a free consultation and figure out where things can go, and how we can help you. But, you know, Nicole and I, my wife, we were having a great conversation, and we were
Right.
just talking about what I'm sure I'm not the first person to coin the phrase, but the attention economy. Now it is the
Ooh,
attention economy. And
that's
so
true.
it's not the best musicians, it's not the best
Right.
movies, it's not the
Right.
best games, it's who can
Right.
attract the attention. And,
Oh,
you
ouch.
know,
Yeah. Mm,
Grand Theft Auto, let's take, like, you know, is one of the biggest games out there. Why? Because you've got not good things going on in that, and you have so many parents who are like, oh, my kids are never going to play on that, you know. Wow, okay, so everyone wants that game now. You've done
yep.
an amazing job of making that game that every kid wants to have now, right?
Right. Right.
And
Because
that's
they
where things
played the
are.
taboo factor, and
Hmm.
now, yeah, and then,
Exactly. You know,
yeah,
the songs that were banned from MTV in the
yeah,
1980s became huge
yeah,
hits because of these things.
yeah.
But Nicole said to me, she said, well, what if I don't want to be out there? What if I don't want to go and post on social media? What if I don't want to do things? And I said this, and this is going to really resonate with your audience.
Yeah.
If you don't want to be the person out there getting attention, you'll work for someone who does.
Ooh, ouch. Yeah, that's true. And then what happens to your gifts? what happens to your light? What happens to your connection of what you're rippling into the world? It starts to just die on the inside. And I know that's why I left my job, because I knew I needed to do more of this.
It just becomes, it's almost like a hobby at that point. It's just something that just goes on in your life. You're not having that true opportunity to help people.
That's true.
And it's not easy. And there's definitely days when many entrepreneurs think, I wish I just had a job and I would just get paid and not have to do with these things.
I think I've had that thought a time or two. Yeah, it's definitely.
Yeah, even we're 7 years in. 2017 we officially started the business, but we've been working on the business since 2016, and so having done it for 7 years and built a business to 7 figures, which is. Only 5% of businesses in the United States make it to $1 million or more a year. And so I know it's kind of crazy, right? It just shows how many small businesses are out there. And honestly, a lot of the time it doesn't feel like we're at that level. Well, sometimes it feels we make, maybe 50,000 a year.
Right. Yeah, it probably a lot of money in and a lot of money out. You have a great team too, and I've worked with your team, and I really enjoy them. So we're getting into the last part of the show. Can you believe the show's just flown by? I can't even imagine. And I don't want this time to go by without asking our signature question, Steve. So here it is. Someone's writing the book of life, and they come to you for a story to include in the book that's going to serve as a guide, a handbook to future generations. What story would you include and why?
The biggest story the biggest lesson I try and teach my kids is to be themselves. And for me, it wasn't a big story. In high school, I struggled, throughout school, I struggled. I remember being in elementary school and getting beat up. I would always get into fights with the boys. I don't know why. I remember one time my mum got a call from the school and they said, "You got to come get him. It's not as bad as it looks."
Are you serious? Oh no.
I'd got beat up by a kid quite a bit bigger and stronger than me. But there was 2 kids that I would always get into fights with, and I struggled a lot to try and fit in with the boys. I wasn't particularly sporty, and honestly, my parents were both sporty. My dad was a big soccer player. My mum was a hockey player. They were both sporty. Back to my nana, I'm kind of like her energy, a little bit different, but I always tried to struggle to fit in. And then between sophomore year of high school and junior year of high school, I just decided that I wasn't going to try and do that anymore. And I found myself in doing languages. I was in groups of women only, girls only, and so I just found myself in a lot better position there just by being me instead of trying to be someone, trying to fit into a box. Right. And so what I try and tell my kids is, don't try and fit into the box. You think high school is important, you think fitting in is important, but it's not. You got to kind of create your own box.
I love it. Kind of like you did with your own business. So thank you, Steve. Thank you for being on the show. I so appreciate you. And
I appreciate you too. We didn't even get to the game show, Mitch.
We didn't get to gonna have to be a part 2, I guess. Gonna have to be a part 2. I want to thank my guest, Steve Andrews, New Thought Media Network. Please, if you can, just drop a little coin their way. There'll be a link for you to donate so we can continue to bring these shows. I also want to thank 18 Source Media, who's provided this amazing studio for me to broadcast from. And just stay out of the box. Like Steve said, be yourself, shine your light, and share your story until we meet again. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for watching.